Hello students, welcome back. Myself Pushpendra Singh, and we are going to start with our last session or the last lecture, lecture 6 for the 6th standard history, that is our past part 1. All right. And this series is basically NCERT based. So we will be covering in the class for the NCERT classes or NCERT books. All right. So we will be covering in detail the NCERT books in the sessions itself, and this would be our 6th session for the 6th standard history book. All right, so let's begin right from the continuation of our last class that we stopped in our last class. And I welcome you all. Myself Pushpendra Singh. Let's begin with the class. Okay, so we were studying basically the administration of the kingdoms. All right, so we have studied the kingdoms and we were studying basically the administrative perspective, right? So you must understand, in the ancient India, the king adopted the number of steps, because you must understand on that time also the king was dependent. The king was dependent on the support of the few of the powerful and persons, right? So those persons or those men who were basically supporting the king, right, from internally as well as externally, was part of the kingdom, Now the king was basically started adopting such steps so that it can win the support of the men who was basically more powerful, right, which are powerful either economically or which are socially. So for them the king basically started supporting, right? So you must understand, because their political and military strength was somewhat strong, and that can basically support the king, right, from expanding the empire. And also in the ancient time, lot of battles have to be waged, right? So you need basically man and material. How would you ensure that the man and material will be available on the right time? It will be available only when you have the some sort of a the negotiation, some sort of a treaties with those persons who are powerful and who are staying and who are basically supporting your cause at every situation. All right, so this is what you must understand. Now let's begin with the administrative perspective, right? So for that, the king started those steps which were related to the close association with those persons. So now you must understand, how would you ensure that these person would be closely associated with the king? So the king started offering some of the administrative posts, right? So these administrative posts which were offered by the kings, now they have become increasingly hereditary. Hereditary means the son of the person would be the only heir of such post. So that means the son will succeed the father and his son will succeed the son. So like that, the son only will succeed the post which was held by the father, and this is how the hereditary conditions will be there. For example, the poet Harisena, which was the Mahananda Nayaka, or the Mahananda Nayaka, basically also called the chief judicial officer, was like his father. That means the Harisena's father was also the chief judicial officer, and he was also chief judicial officer because of the hereditary conditions, which was related to certain important administrative post. And sometime the one person held many offices. Now it depends on the person's popularity, it depends on the person's economic might, it depends on the person's the strength. If the person command very high position in terms of prestige, in terms of economic strength, in terms of military strength, the person can basically held many offices. For example, right, for example, the similar person which was Harisena, who was the Mahananda Nayaka, as I told you, was the chief judicial officer during the kingdoms. Now the same person who was Harisena, who was the chief judicial officer, also he was the Kumar Amatya means he was an important minister, and also he was a minister of war and peace, which was also called Sandhi Vigrahika. Sandri Vigrahika. It means the minister of war and peace. So that means the important persons may be holding the more than one portfolio, just like a normal ministers in our political administrative setup. For example, if you visit Uttar Pradesh government website, you will see the Yogi Adityanath portfolio. Open the Yogi Adityanath portfolio, you will find that he is still holding many departments and many ministries under him. There are many ministers under UP government which is holding such more than one or two portfolios, right, which were vested in the single minister. So it was something which is as equal as it was there in the ancient period of the time. So it is quite obvious that the important minister can hold more than one important portfolio. Besides, the important men probably, right, have say in the local administration also, because they are more powerful in terms of military, in terms of economic might. So they were basically included in basically Nagar Shreshti. Nagar Shreshti means the chief banker or the merchants of the city, or the leader of merchant caravans, which were also called Sarthavaha, or the chief craftsperson, which was also called Prathama Kulika, or the head of kayastas, which was also called scribes. So you must understand the important man which had to be which had say in the local administration. These were included into the important, right, the positions which were related to, let's say, the chief banker, which was related to the merchant of the city, which was related to the leader of merchant caravans, which are related to the chief craftsman, or which was related to the scribes, which was related to the scribes. So in that, the important persons which is having the some greater say in the local administration was involved. All right. Now, these policies which were made was reasonably effective, but you must understand the king made these policies of having the closer association with some of the most powerful, which was economically more powerful, because which was the militarily more powerful, so that the king become more stabilized, more strengthened. So it was more reasonably effective. But what happens is, if you incorporate such equally powerful persons in your emperor, in your empire, what will happen? The sooner or later, such equally powerful person would basically try to enforce the authority on you, because they are equally powerful, and you are having the support of such persons. So some of those powerful men who basically supported you, ultimately they become, or they grow much more powerful, right? And they grow their strength, and ultimately they form some of the independent kingdoms. So that is how it was happening, that the king, in terms of stabilizing its empire, had the close association with the more stronger one, right? Then over the period of the time, these stronger one emerged as a independent kingdom under the reign of such powerful persons, because they started you know showing its authority over the parent king, and they basically formed the independent kingdoms in the process. So that is how it was happening during the basically in the ancient past. Now let's understand the new kind of army. What is this new kind of army means? So you must understand, you have the rulers, which was earlier rulers. Now few of these rulers, right, have maintained a well organized army. Okay, because army, just like a normal, for example, just like a normal modern state, for example, India has well organized army. So like that, there were rulers which had the more well organized army, right? This army on that time consists of, say, elephants, which were used for say for marching of the armed forces, the chariots, which were basically used by some of the royal persons, right? The cavalry, which was on and you have some of the foot soldiers also. So these were basically composition of your well organized army. They were basically they are basically well disciplined, and they were manned by or maintained by the king itself. Okay. Now now apart from these kings which maintained this well organized army, there were many kings, right, and under which there were many military leaders, right? Many military leaders who provided the king with the troops whenever he need them. So they were not paid regular salary. So you must understand, only the few kings maintained a well organized army that was regular. Otherwise, there are other kings also, where the king was supported by a military leaders, and these military leaders would ensure the troops availability, or the person who are there in the army's availability to the king whenever the king needed, right? And that is how such persons are not paid regular salary, because only when the need arises, the people will be, collected, the people will be organized, they will be inducted into the troops, and they will be sent for the war, they will be sent for the war. Otherwise they are not paid regular salaries, otherwise they are not paid regular salaries, because you must understand, these people were basically, are not regularly employed under the king. They were only when they are needed. All right. And instead some of them receives grants of land. So you must understand, the instead of giving them salary, right, they were giving the grant means either in the form of certain entitlement, or maybe in the form of, the money. So they were paid in the form of land. And you must understand, they also collected the revenue from the land, and use this to maintain the soldiers, horses, and provide equipment for the warfare. Now you are getting my point. For example, if there is a military leader, for example X, and who's providing the troops to the king. Now, for example, if that person who is a military leader and who is X has received a grant of, let's say, the 12 biga of the land. Now, on this 12 biga of the land, the the military leader who is being awarded this land, now this land would be used for collecting the revenue from the people who was basically, staying on the land. And moreover, his responsibility is to maintain the soldiers and the horses, right? Because the land have been granted to such military leader. Now he has to make soldiers and the horses to be ready, to be prepared for any sort of a warfare, right? Which at any point of the time the king can ask such military leader to provide such soldiers and the horses, and provide all sort of equipments for the warfare. So such things were basically very common during the kingdoms. And these men were also known as samantas. Whenever the ruler was weak, the samantas tried to become independent. So all right, so you got my point. So samantas are those people who receive the land in the form of grant from the kingdom or from the king, right? These samantas used to collect the revenue from the land, and moreover, these samantas used to maintain the soldiers and the horses, and these samantas provide the equipment for the warfare. All right. Now you must understand, these samantas, so though they are very powerful, because they have the support of the soldiers, horses, equipment, and all sort of things. So whenever the ruler was weak, these samantas try to become independent and form the independent kingdom during the weak ruler, right? Okay. Now let's understand the assemblies in the southern kingdom. Like, what was the significance of the assemblies in the southern kingdom during ancient past? Okay, so we came to know about those assemblies in the southern kingdom, right, through the inscriptions of Pallavas. I told you the inscriptions are basically, are the messages which were inscribed on the hard surfaces. These hard surfaces may be the stones or maybe the metals. Now the Pallava was the dynasty which was also inscribed such messages on some hard surfaces. So these inscriptions of the Pallava mention a number of local assemblies which used to be conducted on the regular period of the time. And these local assemblies included, right, the Sabha, which is an assembly of Brahmin landowners. You are getting my point. So these assemblies, which included the Sabha, and the Sabha had only the assembly of Brahmin landowners. So landowners means the Brahmins who own the land. Now this assembly functioned through subcommittees. Okay. Now these subcommittees who looked after irrigation, agricultural operations, let's say for making the roads, let's say for making the temples, right, for making arrangement for sewers, right, for making arrangement for, say, for different dams and etc. and so forth. So you must understand, just like the normal Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha we had in the modern state. Okay, there was assembly. Now the assembly was functioned through the subcommittees. Now, these small subcommittees would be looking after various subjects. These subjects are related to irrigation. These subjects are related to agricultural operations. These subjects are related to making roads. These subjects are related to local temples and etc. All right. And based on the assistance of such committees, the assembly used to function. The assembly used to function. Right. Now, the the Ur was a village assembly, right? So you must understand the name called Ur. Ur was a village assembly. They are found in the areas where the landowners are not Brahmins. This is the very important point. Can be asked in the objective type questions. So generally, the assembly consists of the Brahmin landowners in the southern kingdom, because the Brahmins was more powerful. They were more influential on the king, and there were certain areas also, or certain village assemblies, where the landowners are not Brahmins, but rather the landowners are some belongs to some other caste, and such village assemblies are called Ur. And the Nagaram was an organization of merchant. All right. So whenever you have this term called Nagaram, it is an organization, or it was an organization of merchants. So always remember that these words can be asked by the UPSC, right? Because they can directly ask you, the Nagaram was associated with, the Ur was associated with. So, right? So Ur was associated with the landowners, which was not Brahmins. Now, these assemblies were controlled by the rich and the powerful landowners. That is obviously clear, because only the rich and powerful landowners can only control such assemblies. Otherwise the lower class cannot basically control such assemblies. All right. Now, let's briefly understand the ordinary people in the kingdom. Who were the ordinary people in the kingdom? So ordinary people, to basically ask the people to. All right. So such people was asked, or such people was forced to stay on the outskirts of the villages, right? Because the higher caste people would obviously put pressure on the lower caste to stay, the lower caste to the outskirts of the villages. All right. So this is what is something you must understand. Let's understand the buildings, paintings, and the books. What is the significance of such things? So first of all, let's begin the study of stupas. Okay. So what is this? What was these stupas is all about? So first of all, you must understand, when you have to look into the skills of our craft persons, right, you must look into the stupas, right? These stupas are survived even after hundreds of the years. So right, so they are basically, such craft person or such skills are there in the buildings, right? And these buildings are in the form of, or these monuments are in the form of stupas, right? So what is that stupa means, right? What is that stupa means? So stupa means it is a mound. Stupa means it is a mound, right? So so in our country there are several kinds of stupas, right? Some stupas are built round just like that. Some stupas are tall just like that. Some stupas are very big, some stupas are very small, right? They have certain common features, right? They have certain special features also. So this word stupa means mound, which may be of any size, which may be round, which may be long, which may be tall, which may be small, or which may have certain common features, or which may not have common features but may have certain special features to build. Now, regarding the architecture of the stupa, there is a small box, right, which is placed at the center or the heart of stupa. The small box. Generally, this small box used to place at the heart. Heart means at the center of the stupa. This small box used to contain the body remains. For example, the 8-9 stupas were basically constructed, right, after the remains of Gautam Buddha, which was basically after the remains of basically, the Ashoka, which was basically distributed all along, right, all along the different places. So like that, these stupas consist of the bodily remains, of the Buddha and its followers. For example, the stupas which was constructed and which was associated with the Buddha and Buddhism followers, they basically carry the bodily remains of Buddha. The bodily remains of Buddha. These bodily remains, for example, maybe teeth, maybe bone, maybe ashes, right? So teeth, bone, ashes, after the person died, after the Buddha died, his followers died, right? So they used to have certain stones, coins, and etc. apart from the bodily remains. So such box will consist basically, or will be put at the heart of stupa. So that is how the whole the significance of stupa. So they are basically commemorating, or they are basically commemorating the remains of the Buddhism, or remains of the followers of the Buddhism. Now, this box also known as the relic cascade. The relic cascade, which was covered with the earth. Okay. Later, a layer of mud brick or baked brick was added on the top. Right. When this layer of mud brick and the baked brick what basically added on the top, this has again led to evolution of the dome-like structure, right, which basically covered with the carved stone slabs. Now, this looks very beautiful and the fascinating, but initially this was just covered by the earthen layer, just by mitti. And its architecture. All right. So that will give you lot of architecture regarding the stupa. All right. This stupa, which is there now, you must understand the path, which is also called the pradakshina path, which is generally laid around the stupa. Okay, so you can basically move all around the stupa, right? And this was surrounding with the railings, just like जैसे घर के चारों तरफ रेलिंग होती है ना, इसी तरह से on all all covering your stupa, there is a path that is called pradakshina path, and this pradakshina path is basically covered with a railing, right? And the entrance to the path is called basically gateways. Okay, just like you have the staircase, right, where you can enter into that. So just like there, here also you have the gateways, through that you can enter into pradakshina path. The pradakshina path is basically surrounding your the stupa, and this stupa is again surround, or this pradakshina path is again surrounded by one railing. Okay, that railing is basically consisting of again stones. All right. Now, the devotees which used to come and which used to see, or which used to look into the, or which used to come and to observe such stupas, they used to walk around the stupa. Okay, so how would they walk around the stupa? they used to walk on the pradakshina path, in the generally in the clockwise direction. Okay, that is how they used to move as a mark of devotion. All right, so devotees used to move in the clockwise direction on the pradakshina path around your the stupa. Right, both railings and the gateways were often decorated with the sculpture. All right, so this is how, once you look the figure, right, in the NCERT book, into the figure, that figure will tell you how beautifully the railings and the gateways are decorated with the fine sculpture, right? So this is how they looks great. Okay, the other buildings were hollowed out of rock to make artificial caves. Okay, some of these were very elaborately decorated with the sculpture and the painted walls. All right, so this is all about, stupa. All right, let's understand Hindu temples. What was there in the Hindu temples during ancient past? Okay, so let's briefly understand about Hindu temples. So Hindu temples, so most important part of the temple. Okay, आपने temples देखा होगा, they basically, so most important part of the temple was a room where the image of the deity is placed. जैसे भगवान की मूर्ति रखी रहती है ना, उस रूम को बोलते हैं गर्भगृह, गर्भगृह, right? So the room where the main deity or the chief deity was placed, right, that room is known as garbhagriha, garbhagriha. So that garbhagriha is the most important part of any Hindu temple. All right, so this thing you must understand. Now it was here the priest perform the religious rituals. आप किसी भी बड़े टेम्पल में जाएंगे, आपको गर्भगृह मिलेगा, जो एक रूम होता है, in the room where the main deity was placed, right? And nearby the main deity, the priest or pandit that will be, present over there, and that will perform certain religious rituals. And devotees, if you go to the temple, what we do, you would basically offer the worship, right? Just like that, other devotees used to come and they offer worship to the deity. So that is how there will be, that is how it will be there. But generally you will not be allowed to enter into the garbhagriha, isn't it? Because the garbhagriha where the main deity have been placed. So that is how you must understand. Often the Vetar Gaon, right, it is basically a tower, is also known as शिखरा. So आपने मंदिर के ऊपर देखा होगा, मंदिर के ऊपर एक शिखर की तरह एक टावर होती है basically, right? So this tower would always built on the top of गर्भगृह. अच्छे से देखेंगे तो आपको लगेगा कि वो टावर केवल गर्भगृह के ऊपर ही बनाया जाता है, मतलब just on the top of that room, just on the top of that room. So that basically, mark out the significance of that sacred place, because the main deity is placed in the garbhagriha, that is the room. And if you make a tower with a shikhar, that will basically give you, the outstanding, the importance, or mark out the importance of the sacred place. So that is basically, in the form of shikhara. Now building shikhara required the careful planning, because you must understand, if you visit some of the southern India temples, they are beautifully, right, very beautifully, they have carved out such, shikharas. They are very, very, unique sculpture features. Now you have to refer your the art and culture book, where the detailed descriptions of, the architecture regarding the temples have been very beautifully described. Even when we cover your art and culture book, we will be covering this feature again. Okay, now most of the temples are also had a space which is known as mandapa, right? मंडपा का मतलब होता है कि ये एक हॉल होता है बेसिकली आपके पास, where the people could assemble. जैसे मंदिर के बाहर आप मंदिर है, तो मंदिर के अंदर जैसे आप एंटर करेंगे तो there is a hall. उस हॉल के चारों तरफ डाइटीज होंगी. दैट मींस once you enter the temple, you will have hall, and all around the hall you will have the small deities which will be placed, right? So that deity, where the deity is placed, that is called garbhagriha. Okay, and that hall where the devotees enter and perform the prayers, that is called basically mandapa. All right, so mandapa का मतलब होता है the place where the devotees assemble and perform the prayers. And garbhagriha means it is the room where the main deity is placed, and where the pandit is placed. Pandit is placed, sorry, pandit is present, right? Which can basically, perform certain rituals, right? Certain, worship, right? To basically to the god. All right. Now let's understand the stupa and the temple which was built during the ancient period of the time, right? For you must understand, for good stupa in the temple building, a good quality stone was needed. Okay, because you cannot made the stupa without good quality stone. Okay, you need certain stone, and which should be looking appealing, fresh, isn't it? Very fine also. Now such type of stone is not found everywhere, so you need to go some place which shall be quarried, which shall be transported to the place where often carefully chosen for the new building, right, for making the stupas and the temple. Now generally the rough blocks of the stone had to be shaped, right? If you want to make the sculpture of a god, and you have to carve into the pillars, panels, right, for the walls, floors, and ceilings, etc. So that beautiful architecture, you can look into the temples, how beautifully they have been carved out in terms of the deity, in terms of the pillars, in terms of say, panels of the walls, in terms of the floors, in terms of the ceilings. So that required basically very high precision. Without precision you cannot carve out. And the kings and the queens who used to be there, they spent a lot of money from the treasury to pay the craft persons who worked to build these splendid structures, right? So such splendid structures are in the form of stupa or the temples. They were paid from the treasury, right, for making such a splendid and a fascinating structure during the ancient period of the time. Okay, so when these devotees came to visit the temples or the stupa, they often brought gifts. Generally, what happens is this is just a practice. So if the devotees is coming to the temple, they generally brought gift. जैसे हम लोग मंदिर जाते हैं तो मिठाई लेके जाते हैं ना, उसको पंडित जी खा जाते हैं. तो उसी तरह से the devotees used to take the gift. Okay, these gift is basically to decorate the buildings, isn't it? So the to decorating the buildings, to offering this gift to the deities, that is altogether the gift which have been brought by the devotees. Now someone who paid for the decorations were the merchants. Okay, even today many temples have been generously gifted by merchants, right? The farmers, garland makers, perfumers, smiths, hundreds of the men and women who were known only by the names were inscribed on the pillars, railings, and the wall. So such stupas, such temples were made out of the contribution of such merchants, right? And they were basically inscribed, right? Their names have been inscribed on the pillars, railings, and the walls of such stupas and the temples. All right. So this is what you must understand. The paintings, most of the Ajanta caves have good paintings and the Buddhist monasteries. Now we will again revisit them, right? So Ajanta caves, Ellora caves that are there in the Maharashtra, right? We will be visiting or we will be learning about those caves a bit later. Okay. Now the books, some of the best known books which were written during this period. For example, you must understand these books having the greater descriptions of the stories about the gods, right? They were having some of the descriptions, composition of related to the heroic man and the woman. Okay, for example, the famous Tamil epic, which is also called the the Silapadikaram. The Silapadikaram, it is consist or it is composed by a poet which is known as Elango. Okay, it is composed around 1800 years ago. Now this epic, or sorry, the another epic or Tamil epic which is also known as Mani Mekalai. This Mani Mekalai was composed by Sattanar, and it is composed around 1400 years ago, right? This Mani Mekalai, which was a Tamil epic, right? This famous epic consists of the story of daughter of Kovalam and Mandi, right? These beautiful compositions was lost to the scholars, okay, for many centuries, right? And it was again regained, or it was again back till the manuscripts have been rediscovered, right, about 100 years ago. So you must understand these manuscripts which were written on the leaves, palm leaf, the manuscripts which were written on, say, on the birch, on the bark of the birch tree. so which have been again rediscovered around 100 years ago. Otherwise they would have lost to to nothing, right? So this is what you must understand regarding the paintings, books, and other Tamil epic. We will be again revisiting these books and also etc. in the higher standard of your class. So this is just in 6th standard NCERT. So this is not very detailed. This is not very detailed, but it is just simplest example of how the history, how our ancient past used to have. Right. So it is just in description. When you basically graduate to the higher class, you will be learning the greater detail of such books also. Okay. Some of the books have been written. For example, the Puranas literally mean old. Okay. These Puranas contains the stories about the god. So आपने देखा होगा Puran, right? So that Puran का मतलब होता है old. Puranas, that is old. So these Puranas consist of certain stories, and that stories is related to the gods and goddess. For example, certain Puranas consist of the stories of the Vishnu is Shiva is a god, Durga, Parvati. So generally they consist of the stories of the god, and they also contain the detail on how they were to be worshipped, right? So you must understand, such Puranas consist of the stories of the god, and they also give you certain the details about how we should worship them, how they were to be worshipped, right, during that period of the time. So that all gives you regarding regarding your the Hindu god and goddess, the stories about Hindu god and goddess. Besides, there are another accounts which is related to the creation of the world, about the kings. All such things are basically related to kings. For example, if the king would have won a battle, right, it would have it would have composed by some poet in terms of the showing of the valor, the courage of the king, right? Even the Puranas were written in the simple Sanskrit verse, and they were meant to be heard by everybody, including the women and the Shudras, and who were not allowed to study Vedas. So very, very important point. Even UPSC asked this question. Many times this statement have been asked regarding the difference between Vedas and the Puranas. The Puranas are not allowed to be heard by Shudras and the women. You are getting my point? The women and the Shudras were not allowed to hear basically the Vedas, but the Puranas are meant to be heard by everyone, including the women and the Shudras. This is what is most important point you can take out from this slide. And they were probably recited in the temples by the priest and the people who came to listen them, right? So unlike the Vedas, they can be recited by the common people, including the women and the Shudras, also in the ancient period of the time, right? Two Sanskrit epic, that is Mahabharata and the Ramayana, have been popular for very long period of the time. Okay, आपने सबने सुना होगा महाभारता और रामायण के बारे में. Just they are popular, very popular for the longer period of the time. The Mahabharata is about the war which is fought between the Kauravas and the Pandava. महाभारता स्टोरी आती थी, न्यू आपके पास बचपन में आपने देखा होगा सबने कि there was a serial on DD News or DD Doordarshan. Right, this was a story between the Kauravas and the Pandavas, right, who were the cousins in this, and was a war to be gain control of the throne of Kurus, right, and their capital was Hastinapur. So you must understand all such stories were there in the Mahabharata. Okay, the story itself was an old one, was written down in the form in which we know it today, about 1500 years ago. Okay, so you must understand the story was written in around 1500 years ago, but nobody knows whether the Mahabharata was a real story or not, because it was not written, it was not documented anywhere, but it is just composed in around 1500 years ago only. So that is how we can infer by such stories that this could have been the war between the Kauravas and the Pandavas, right? Even both Puranas and the Mahabharata was supposed to have been compiled by the Vyasa. Vyasa was again a poet. So who have composed this Purana is the Mahabharata. The Ramayana जो story आपने सुनी होगी, Ramayana is basically all about Rama, Lord Rama, who was a prince of Kosala. Kosala was a kingdom. Okay, so Rama was the basically prince of Kosala. Now, who went to exile for 14 years. Okay, you might have heard the story of Ramayana. Okay, the story of Ramayana is something is that there was a wife called Sita. Okay, so Rama's wife Sita was abducted by the king of Lanka. लंका नरेश सबने सुना होगा, रावणा. सो रावण था, उसने क्या किया, सीता जी का हरण कर लिया. ठीक है. द वाइफ सीता वाज जनरली abducted by the Ravana, and Rama has to fight that battle because he has to make free, right? He has to make free his wife from the clutches of Ravana. So for that, Rama has to fight a battle, isn't it, to get her back. And in the Ramayana, it is shown that the Rama generally won. The Rama won the battle and returned back to the Ayodhya, which was the capital of Koshala, after his victory. All right. So that is that is how the Ramayana was composed, right? So all such stories which was there is related to some of the previous the happenings which were there in the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. Now there were other stories also which were basically, you must understand, which were also called Jataka story. Now these Jataka stories are told by the ordinary people, right? For example, you might have heard about from your grandfather and great grandfathers that the peoples used to visit from village to village. They used to go, and people, whenever these people used to visit the villages, the people used to surround them, and such Jataka stories used to dictated by these people, and these people used to listen them, right? So that is how the stories which are told by the ordinary people are also called Jataka story. All right, so such things are there basically in our ancient past. Okay, now let's understand the books that were based on the science. Okay, so certain books which are based on the science, for example, the you might have heard about the great mathematician and astronomer who was also known as Aryabhatta. So Aryabhatta was basically great mathematician and astronomer who basically written the book called Aryabhattinam, right? Aryabhattiam. Now, in this book, basically he developed the scientific explanation of the eclipse, right? This is basically he started, or he also found a way of calculating the circumference of the circle, right? Which is nearly as accurate as the formula that we use today. Okay, so circumference that we call calculate from the mathematical formula, it was found is an exactly on the way it was calculated, or the calculation of the circumference was exactly as accurate as it was the formula which was we know today, which was we know today. All right, so this is what it's all about in the today's NCERT. All right. So what we covered in the today's NCERT, you can also look at into this. So today we have completely covered your the history book of the sixth standard. So I would suggest you to refer again, revisit, okay, your history, okay, history book. Read that history book, okay, that is the sixth standard NCERT book. Okay, we have covered this book completely. So we have covered this book completely, and from tomorrow, I mean from our next class, we will be starting the geography, or we will be starting the geography. All right, so these books you must refer, because these are basically the foundation, these are the foundation of the preparation for the civil services examination. All right, so refer these books, and we are one by one we will be covering these books. All right, so today we have completed your sixth standard NCERT history book, and tomorrow we'll again revisit, but that will be your geography books. Okay, so let's briefly understand what we have covered in the today's class. All right, so today we have covered the administration of the kingdom, where we learned that the king started associating itself with the number of people who were equally powerful in terms of economically, in terms of socially, and the administrative, there were certain posts which were reserved for for those people, which become the hereditary, because the king has to dependent on them. right? And even the one person hold many offices, many posts, right? Because you must understand, these people were very influential. Influential, very effective. But later, these people, which was very strong, they basically set up their independent kingdom in the later period of the time. All right. And new kind of army, that was basically, some king were having, well defined army, well organized army. Other king basically have the support of the military leaders. These military leaders used to have the, used to give the support to the kings whenever required. And these military leaders used to receive the grants of in the form of land from the king. And you must understand that, these military leaders used to collect the revenue from the land. They used to maintain soldiers, horses, and they were provided some sort of equipments for the warfare, isn't it? And there was set of people that is called samantas, right? Whenever the ruler is weak, these samantas try to become independent from the king itself, right? And there were assemblies in the southern kingdom that we have also studied. So through the inscriptions of the Pallava, we came to know that there were local assemblies which would generally consist of the Brahmin landowners. Okay, these assemblies basically used to perform through subcommittees. These subcommittees used to look after the irrigation, agriculture operations, roads, local temples, and etc. And there were certain assemblies also which were not basically included by the Brahmins, but were included by another caste. They are called Ur, and they are the term which is called Nagaram, which is an organization of merchants. Okay, now these assemblies are controlled by the rich and powerful landowners. Okay, next, understand the ordinary people in the kingdom. So ordinary people basically belongs to the lower caste, and these lower caste people used to stay on the outskirts of the villages. Okay, because the powerful person used to stay at the center, and they forced such people, which was also called the lower caste, to stay outside of the settlement. Okay, let's understand the stupas. Stupas are basically also called the mound, which were basically several kind of stupas, which may be round, which may be tall, which may be big, or which may have common feature, or which may not have common feature, but which may have special features also. All right. And you can also say that the stupas are generally having a central place, or the small box which will be placed at the heart of stupa, or at the center of the stupa. This heart of the stupa, or the center of the stupa, this box consists of the remains of the Buddha and its followers. And you must understand, these initial phases of the time, these remnants were basically covered by, say, earth, and later period of the time, these were covered by the mud bricks, back bricks, and later it will be covered on the stone slabs also. And it looks so fascinating, right? Even today, right? The path which was basically surrounding the stupa is called Pradakshina path. In the Pradakshina path, the devotees used to come, and the devotees used to the follow this path, which shows in the form of devotion. They used to move in the clockwise direction, and this Pradakshina path is covered by, or surrounded by, the railings. And both railings and the gate, and you must understand, access to that path is also through one gateway, that is also called the gateways. Okay, and there are certain caves also, which was artificial, which was hollowed out of the rock, right? And regarding Hindu temples, there was room where the deity is placed, that is called Garbhagriha. This Garbhagriha was the room where the chief deity is placed, right? And above this Garbhagriha, there will be a tower, right? Which is having the shikhara, and this shikhara basically signify that below that there will be a Garbhagriha where the chief deity is placed, right? And there is another set of space that is called mandapa, where the devotees used to assemble and they used to pray, right? And you must understand, these stupas and the temple were beautifully carved, right? They were scientifically carved, and even the kings and the queens spend the money from the treasury to pay the craft of such persons. All right. And even even today, the devotees which used to visit the temples, stupa, they used to bring lot of gift, right? These gift items used to decorate those, the stupas and the temples during that period of the time. All right, and these are some of the books you can see that, right? Silpadikam, that is Tamil epic, and you have Mani Mekala, which is also Tamil epic, which is also written by some of the poets who were well known. And there were stories like Puranas, there were stories like Mahabharata, there were stories like, the Ramayana, which were written by the poets also, right? Even they were happened to be long back, but they were written recently around 1500 years ago. All right. There were Jataka story. These were told by the ordinary people. And no, there is Ramayana, which is basically the story of Rama and the Sita. The 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 Sita was abducted by the Lanka Naresh, who is also called Rama, and Rama is also called Ramana, and Rama has to go and let the Sita free from the clutches of Ravana, and they both returned to the capital of Khosla, because Rama was basically a prince of Khosla. Rama was basically a prince of Khosla. All right. Then the books which were written, basically, for example, the scientific books which were written are also called the basically the Aryabhatyam, written by Aryabhatta, who was a mathematician, great mathematician and astronomer, right, on that period of the time. All right. So we have completed, and we have finished your history book completely. So you must refer your history book, 6th standard history book, and tomorrow we'll start with your geography book. All right. So this would be your the last class for the 6th standard history, and we'll meet again for your geography book. All right. So thank you very much for attending this class. Thank you.